Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk. We're going to do some more Postmortem. Thank you for your patience. Oh, and hey, I listen to my subscribers. If you guys are getting like full up on this discussion of the Dungeons and Dragons of the 2023 Spring Dungeons and Dragons OGL 1.1 leak Firestorm. If you guys are like, man, I am full up on this content, let me know. I'm willing to hear you. Like I don't want to carry this on longer than it needs to, but I really feel like there's still some stuff to say here, and there's still a lot of discussion, and there's still a lot of analysis to do, and we're really in the postmortem now. And the other issue is this was a huge Dungeons and Dragons event. Just so you're aware, like when I say, oh, it's a big deal of Dungeons and Dragons, this not me just pontificating. There are history books, multiple history books about Dungeons and Dragons. And those don't stop with TSR, right? Like what's happening right now, we're going to get another round, right, of these, like, we're going to, like, there are going to be books that will be written just about the history of D&D's time with Hasbro. Just, you could do a history book from just D&D Hasbro period. And actually, I'm looking forward to that, right? So, but let's get in. So let me get exactly to what I want to talk about today. Was it leaked, or was it carefully managed and released exactly as Hasbro intended? Question mark, right? And so one, I'm going to say this right now. I'm going to be doing some speculation in this. I would say this entire video is speculation. I'm asking a question, and I'm going to tell you my opinion, and I'd like your opinion, right? Because the reality is, I don't think we are barely unpacking what just happened, right? And the reality, and what's really happening is like the OGL and the OGL 1.0 creators and the OSR community had a fun time, like burning things in the street. But now they have work to do, right? So one of the things is I feel like we can get a little bit of analysis time and a little postmortem, right? Because we don't have to listen to them squawk anymore, because no OGL 1.0 creators should be squawking anymore, and we shouldn't have to hear any of their frou-for-all because they have a ton of work to do, right? And if you hear them talking, right, rather than working, that's interesting because it means they're going to lose, right? Because I can tell you right now, Hasbro works, right? We are going to get those books dropping like a drum beat, right? Because they actually work. They do more than talk, right? And now the OGL 1.0 creators and the OSR community, is it just talk? That's the question that's to them, right? But so okay, so there's two concepts here. Let's talk about it, right? So the OGL 1.1 was leaked, right? Like, so the story, right, is that Hasbro sent this document out, right? And then it's received by these different large corporations like Cobbled Press, or there's about 20 groups, 20 different institutions, whether they're companies or corporations or some collection or a game studio, whatever the overlap is, right, that are making over $750,000 a year, right? We know that now. The number's between like 15 and 20, right? I don't think anybody knew that. That's pretty surprising, right? That there's like close to 20 millionaires based on just being adjacent to D&D, right? Like that's pretty incredible, right? Right. So basically the idea was that, they sent it out, and that Hasbro was surprised when one of these groups turned around and presented it to everybody on every social media site, right? Or did Hasbro realize they absolutely had to change the OGL, right? I don't think anyone in good faith can deny that they absolutely need to change the OGL, right? Their stated things are alone, like we need to separate D&D from hate speech. Check. I think that's 100% true. We need to separate. So they were saying hate from product type, saying, hey, you guys are okay to make a book, right, in a PDF, but you can't be running off making NFTs, making video games, printing physical product, making songs. Like this is getting too much, right? I think anybody who's being reasonable with Hasbro, that's too much to say that the OGL extended out beyond books. I totally agree. I think that's very reasonable. And last is, this was never meant to make 20 groups of millionaires, right? Like, this is supposed to be for plunkers. This is supposed to be like, hey, you made something in your garage, and now you can show it, you can put it on the refrigerator. It was never meant to mint like 20 like for realsies competitors that were doing the same work, right? And so I think all that's reasonable. Now, Professor Dungeon Master literally just read their words in a mocking tone, which I thought was very derisive and unfair, in my humble opinion. And I'm really sad and disappointed what's happening with Professor Dungeon Master. I think he had one of the best channels on YouTube about Dungeons and Dragons, and I think he's shifting from analysis to just he's like pulling his full Grognard cape out, and it just sounds like a lot of complaining at this point. And also, he's not even being consistent with what he's saying, because he was like, I'm going to walk away from this. Here, watch this crusty video about my miniatures. And literally, like, he was like, hey, I'm going to destroy my channel. And then he's like, hey, remember the content I showed you? I said, not even a video game that I was going to... Here's more of that I told you I was going to walk away from. Like, there wasn't even a single video gap. Like, that was like, wow, that was really fast turnaround, right? All right, so we have the, all of this is coming through. Here's my question mark. I'm not saying this happened, I'm asking, right? Because I think it might have. I think it's like, here's what, in my humble opinion, and that is all it is. I think Hasbro was very smart, realized they had to change the OGL, and sent it to these organizations knowing full well that this was going to blow up. Right? And people were like, how could they possibly want that, because this was so damaging. Was it? Was any of this damaging? There's zero proof that this cost them a single dollar yet. In fact, YouTube has been, D&D is all over the algorithm. And in America, there's no difference between fame and infamy, right? There is zero proof that this has cost them a single dollar yet, right? The reality is people might have said oh my gosh, look how upset people are, right? And the movie's coming up, right? And maybe I'm going to go get those books now, right? And the reality is, I don't believe for 1 second that this cost them a dollar. And here's the other issue, right? Why would they do this? Why would Hasbro, I'm not saying they did, I'm saying I think, right? This is my opinion, right? Based on, and here's the thing, I don't call leaks evidence, right? Like, if they send me a document, right? Because the thing is, where's the chain of custody, right? Like, if a company says, hey, we got this document, here it is, how do we know they presented it to us the way it was sent to them, right? Yeah. So here's my supposition, right? Hasbro knows they have to deal with the OGL. They know this Firestorm is going to happen. This was not hard to predict, right? And so they did it now, so that, look at the timing, right? Oh, Firestorm, everybody's upset. Oh, everybody's upset with D&D. Oh, there's Vox Machina, Season 2, a fantastic Dungeons & Dragons story for you to watch, to remind you exactly how awesome Dungeons & Dragons is, from Dungeons & Dragons #1 champion, Matthew Mercer, who is not independent, and is not OGL, and is not OSR. He is a D&D canon hardback writer. He is a Dungeons & Dragons writer. Nothing more or less, right? Don't get it twisted for 1 second. Matthew Mercer doesn't represent the OGL. He doesn't represent, and that's why Critical Role's discussion of this was so milquetoast, right? Their statement was like, oh, hi everybody, like, it's Critical Role. What do we think of all this? Jack all or nothing. like they were very, very low key, right? Like, and the reality is, and there's all these people putting all their hopes oh, they're gonna abandon D&D. I don't think so. In fact, they got a nice D&D story coming up for you this Friday, right? You can all watch your Dungeons & Dragons Legends of Vox Machina, all Dungeons & Dragons heroes from the Dungeons & Dragons setting, Exandria, the D&D canon 5e setting, not OGL, not OSR, modern now D&D. That's Vox Machina, right? That's a Dungeons & Dragons story, in my humble opinion, right? So, and actually, is it even an opinion? It's not an opinion that Exandria is a D&D canon setting, right? You can't say, oh, that's an OGL setting. Is it? No, Exandria isn't. We got 2 canon books, right? So, very interesting. So I actually think this was that they knew there was going to be a tension. They knew there was going to be they needed to manage this known problem, and I think they managed it. I think they perfectly timed it. They were like, "Oh, OGL OSR Firestorm, Vox Machina Season 2. Get excited for Dungeons and Dragons and nothing else, right? Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, and that'll be perfect timing. There's more than enough time for this to be completely forgotten. So, in my humble opinion, right, based just on me looking at the facts on the ground and the way I set up the dominoes, I think this was completely managed by Hasbro, right? And the reality is, I think they knew that they were going to get some pushback from changing the OGL. I believe what they put in their statement, right? That the OGL had to change, right? Hateful speech, remove it from D&D, completely reasonable. Product type is book only, completely reasonable. No competing millionaires. Everybody said the same thing on Kickstarter. Why is Kickstarter like? Why on Kickstarter is like, hey, you can't just roll up here as a millionaire company and do all this, frou-for-all, right? This is supposed to be for plunkers. This is supposed to be garage band energy, right? And it's completely reasonable for Hasbro to say, hey, we don't want to mint 20 millionaire competitors. That's complete. All that is completely reasonable, not mockable, no sarcasm, right? Those are completely reasonable requests, right? And the reality is they are being open and they are really actually dealing with this, right? And we haven't seen what the OSR is going to do. That was all a bunch of cute talk. We haven't seen them put up, right? We haven't seen them deal with the Firestorm when the Firestorm comes, and it will come. You will see. Like, not for me. I'll tell you right now. You actually promise something, and that's just it. They've promised orc, right? Let's see what comes, right? So the reality is, in my humble opinion, I think this was a known issue properly in a timely manner managed by Hasbro. That's my opinion. Every word of that's my opinion. Okay? And I just wanted to share it with you, and I want to say thank you for letting me share it with you. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.